Romans. Welcome to Theatre of the Mind Live 232. Obviously, it's a slightly different live this evening. I'm going to welcome Janet in a second. But firstly, both Janet and I are going to talk about our lived experience. There's going to be no speculation, nothing. It's about our lived experience. And as a social commentary channel, we can talk about anything that we wish, including this. So, as the lead investigator in the Alex Belfield stalking case, former Nottinghamshire Police Detective Constable Janet Percival played a pivotal role in building the prosecution that led to his conviction. So we're going to talk to her about her personal stories, challenges, insights, and lived experiences throughout the investigation and the 5-week trial in 2022. Now, hopefully, we can reveal the human side of the case, from initial involvement to post-trial reflection. And also, there will be an opportunity to put questions to Janet a little later. So firstly, manners maketh man. Welcome, Janet. Welcome to the Theatre of the Mind.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for having me on here. I'm not very well at the moment, so I do apologise if my voice suddenly disappears, but I didn't want to let you down. So here I am from sunny Costa Rica.
Thank you, Janet. And also, if there's any technical issues, as in your internet drops out, we did test it yesterday. It seems to be quite stable. Yeah. But if there's any issues, I'll just talk until you come back online.
Thank you.
So, Janet, you're the person that lived all this, and this is an exclusive for the Theatre of the Mind. It's the first time you've spoken about the case anywhere in any kind of media, including social media. So, why now?
Why now? Good question. I retired at the end of December, and I knew he was coming out in June, and I knew he wouldn't be happy. Quite understandable. Nobody's happy about going to prison, are they? But I thought he would move on. No issue with him starting his YouTube channel. If he wants to have a YouTube channel, that's fine, but he didn't. He started to spread misinformation and lies about the case. And that's why I want to speak about it, because what he's saying is not the truth. The victims are being harassed again by seeing his lies. I mean, not personally by him, but the lies he's spreading sort of underplays what those victims went through, what I went through, and some of my colleagues went through as well, because it wasn't just me that he started on, other colleagues he did. So that's why now. I mean, I could have just gone under the radar, retired and disappeared. But no, it's not fair. It's not fair what is being said online now.
So let's go back to the very beginning. Can you walk me through how you first became aware of the complaints against Alex Belfield and what led you to being assigned as the lead officer in the case?
Okay. I became a detective, full PIP 2 level detective in 2017, and I was on public protection, the department. And you can imagine the summer cases we dealt with, but we also dealt with stalkers. Okay. And I was sat in the office, and I recall my DI just poked his head round the door and says, "Janet, I've got a job for you. I'm going to email it to you." And that was June or July 2019. And that's how I became involved in the case. I read what was sent to me, and no, it was not a package from the BBC as what's being spread. It was statements, it was then exhibits, YouTube videos of 5 people at that point of the case. That's when I got hold of it. And got my head around it in a couple of... Didn't know who he was. No idea who he was. And I have to be honest, I didn't know the people at that point, the 5 people involved. They didn't fill my world. So I did a bit of research on them, not him. I just watched him on YouTube at that point. And I said to my sergeant, he's going to come after us. Because of the way he behaved towards them, I knew he'd come after us. Now, my forte was stalkers. I like to deal with stalkers. I know how to get into their heads. I know how they tick. And I know they're not going to stop, if that makes sense. If they don't feel they've got their point across, they're not going to stop. And that happened with a lot of domestic related stalkers that I dealt with. They don't leave the partner alone. This man won't leave these people alone because he doesn't feel like he's vindicated. So that was the start of my case. And to be fair, I wanted to build my case more than it already had been before I got him in. But because he kept going online about these people, the victims were still being abused while it was in my hands. At that point, I couldn't wait, which led to the first arrest.
So what were
But
your
that was only
initial?
5 at that point. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. What were your initial thoughts when reviewing the victims' reports? I know you've just said that you did other stalking cases. Did anything about the nature of the online harassment stand out as particularly unusual or challenging?
No, if I'm honest, no. It was a very simple case of harassment and stalking to me. But I've dealt with other cases similar. Do it make sense? To me, it wasn't unusual. Didn't stick out. All that stuck out more for me was he was doing it more publicly than your normal standard person that's disgruntled after a relationship, or somebody that's not in a relationship but's fixated on, say, a doctor or somebody they bumped into a shop. He was doing it more publicly because he was doing it online. So that was the only difference to me. The other stuff, the messages, the emails, the stuff on Facebook was not unusual to any other stalker I dealt with. He wasn't anything special. I want to get that across. He was nothing special to me at that point. It wasn't a special case. DI gave me the job and I cracked on investigating at that point.
So, how did the scale of the allegations, expand, as you've just said, multiple victims over nearly a decade?
Mm.
Did that influence your early approach to the investigation?
I could see what the corporation had been trying to do. They had been trying to handle it on their own down the civil route. That was clear. They'd tried to take him to court. They'd tried to send him letters. I don't know if you want me to speak about the emails, but one really sticks in my mind, or two actually. One was to one of the victims that said, I don't care what your solicitor says. I am going to make contact with you when I want to. And the other one was, he won't respond to me. So what else can I do other than come through you? Which actually helped my case to show that the victims were not corresponding with him. There was not this back and to. It was him all along. That was brilliant evidence for my case. Absolutely brilliant that he was ignoring what solicitors were telling him because they tried to do it civilly. They didn't want to bring the police in. They wanted to do it civilly, but they'd tried for a decade to stop this man, and he wasn't stopping. Hence why it then came to the police. I saw at that stage a number of, no, to be honest, no, it was later down the line when I started to get all the emails that I saw the derangement of this, the unstoppable, the changing of email addresses. I've seen people say, block them, block them, block them. They did block him, but he'd get another email address and try again and go that way. So it was relentless. It was relentless for those 5 at that point. And then, obviously, as you're aware, later on, I was being contacted to say he's harassing me, he's harassing me, he's harassing me. And until the point I'd got 10 victims in this case. And at that point, I'm on my own dealing with this. I'm just gathering all the evidence, bringing him in again, interviewing him. Then it just went bang. it got even huger.
Well, focusing on the day-to-day realities, for you,
Yeah.
you have this large case, which is
Yes.
growing by the day. The victims were public figures, but profoundly affected. So, how difficult was it to gain their trust and convince them to engage with a protracted legal process?
I was known as the blunt officer, absolutely blunt to the core. I told everybody how it is. My question to every victim I dealt with, what do you want at the end of this? And 9 times out of 10, they'd say, I want justice. I want them to go to prison. And I would always say, I can't promise that. Cannot promise you at the end of it, but I'll do my best. So I was always honest with all the victims in the case. I told them this is going to be long and protected. It wasn't going to be stopped overnight. And as you're aware, it took, I think, nearly 2 years to get him charged. But that was the reason being it took so long is because we wanted every single email that he'd ever sent to each victim within the BBC and everybody, everybody that wasn't connected with the BBC, everybody. So a forensic team was sent in, and we had thousands upon thousands of emails sent, which we had to catalogue every single one of those emails. So at that point, my DI drafted in other people to help me with this, because we had to go through every single one of those emails. Every single one had to be looked at. Some of them were freedom of information, and he was sending 70 to 90 freedom of information emails to the BBC every single day. So we had to go through all of those, catalogue every single one, cross-reference against who they were naming, etc., etc. So that took time. At the end of it, there was me, a DS, a civilian officer, and another DC working on the case, just to get this all into a format that, say, a jury could understand. But first, we had to get in a format that the CPS could understand. We could see it was stalking. We could, but as you were, the CPS won't charge unless there's a realistic prospect of conviction. So it took time to get it in a format. I mean, it went to the complex crime unit. So it wasn't your everyday CPS that dealt with it. It was a complex crime unit who would normally deal with murders or would deal with high drug crimes or cases where it's going to bring a lot of publicity and, paperwork. And I've never seen so much paperwork that I had to go through. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, yeah, that's what made this case unusual, because your normal everyday domestic stalker will blast the victim over and over again for a short period of time. This was a decade. So we had to go right back and see what we could get from 2011. And the BBC did have some stuff. We dragged some stuff up, but I think you're going to explain why we couldn't use all of that material. There was a reason behind that. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, what material you can use in a trial and what material you can't.
Wasn't there a change of the law in 2012?
Yeah, 2012. I believe it was September 2012 that the new Stalking Act came in. So anything prior to that date, we couldn't use. So because it is evidence of his stalking, but to bring it into a trial that the law only came in 2012, you can't use it. It goes in as unused material. So I had to go through every single email and check the dates on them and say, right, we can use that one, we can't use that one, we can use that one, we can use that one. I mean, I don't want to talk about police jargon, but there is a form called an MG6C, which is where we put all our disclosable material on there. Now, my MG6C had nearly 4,000 items on it that we couldn't use in the case. They weren't exhibit. They were 4,000 items. It took me 30 hours to populate that MG, the biggest I've ever had in my career. That was the biggest.
So
Yeah,
that's
it was
material.
mind-blowing.
Sorry, Janet.
Yes, that's unused. So it's there. We've got it. We disclose it to the defence that we've got it, but we can't physically use some of that because it predated the law coming in. So we can only use stuff from September, I believe it was September 2012. We can only use that material as actual evidence for court. And put it this way, you are not going to go to a trial and have 1,000 emails for 12 members of the public to sit and read in the jury. You're going to lose them. So what you actually collect are the best parts of that evidence you've got to show the jury, so you don't lose them. Because anybody can understand that members of the public don't want to sit there and read endless emails. You know, the prosecution could show there was endless emails, but in court we showed so many just to show a course of conduct, a course of behaviour from this man. So yes, I never to this day I had a case with that much material in it in my whole career, and I've dealt with some serious cases, but that was just unbelievable the amount of material that I had, or me and my colleagues had to go through at that point.
So off the top of your head, we have the unused material, but off the top of your head, how many emails did you have to go through?
Thousands. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess. 4,000 or 5,000 emails easily, if not more. Plus, we're not talking just emails, we're talking about videos, we're talking about tweets, we're talking about Facebook stuff that was there. You know, all of that was evidence. All of that had to be reviewed because you have relevant evidence. You had to put the relevancy test on material. Is it relevant? So during an investigation, you might make some notes in your pocket notebook or your day book about somebody you've spoken to. That is material relating to that investigation, but is it relevant? Is it relevant for the CPS to have? Is it relevant for the defence to see? And bear in mind what a lot of people don't understand. I worked for the defence as well. Okay, I worked for the defence and the prosecution because a police officer is just a gatherer of evidence for the court. So we worked for the Crown. So if there was evidence, so as a detective, you was taught evidence either took you towards the suspect or away from the suspect. Trust me, everything in this case took us towards him. There was nothing that took me away from him. And if there was something that defence needed from me, I would give it to them. Not an issue. But as you're aware, in the end, he represented himself. So that changed the whole sort of sway of the investigation. And I had a good colleague, brilliant ex-detective, as my exhibits and disclosure officer in the end. So basically, any requests that came in from CPS then didn't come to me as such, they came to him. So that took that bit of pressure off me. I wasn't disclosing anymore, it was my colleague.
And
Sorry,
in this case, Janet,
Janet.
In this case, one of the big hurdles, I would imagine, is collecting digital evidence from social media platforms, YouTube, social media. How did you overcome that? Were they helpful?
The victims were, yes. So now if a member of public sends you videos, it's absolutely fine. I don't want to go into what police do in relation to obtaining material offline. That's police work. That's not me anymore. But in this case, because most of the people involved were involved in this sort of world, media world, they were able to send me the stuff that had defamed them. One victim, I know he said I can name him, but I really don't want to, in respect to him. He sent me an awful lot of stuff on a compilation disc. Brilliant. That saved me so much time because police have to go through a process of, filling out forms and getting this material. It's not as easy. But if a member of the public sends it to you, that is absolutely fine. That is absolutely fine. I covered my back so much with the law in this. It was unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. We had to be squeaky clean, and we were. Trust me, I've never gone into a case before without my heart pounding, because you always have that fear about giving evidence. Sailed through this, and that told me something. That told me something. We was absolutely bang to rights on this.
So before we get into the trial and the CPS and the output and outcomes, were you the detective constable that interviewed the convicted stalker?
Yes. Yes. 4 times.
Wow.
4 times.
And
two of my interviews were 4 hours long.
Wow. And without going into police processes, how did he present himself to you?
To be fair, it was no different from any other suspect I dealt with. They try to win you over to begin with. You know, that's the play. Try to win you over. When that didn't work, he went into full victim mode. I'm the victim. I'm the victim. You know, he was given advice not to speak, which is, you know, generally what a solicitor will do. You know, advise their client to go no comment, and he couldn't. So I remember one video, watching one of his videos where he claimed he'd interviewed me. I just wish we'd video recorded those interviews. I wish we had, because no, he didn't interview me in any shape or form. He became quite upset, shouting at me a number of times, saying he was the victim and I wasn't allowing his free speech. In the end, I consulted a forensic psychologist in relation on how to deal with him in interviews, and they advised, you just ask your question. Don't engage any further. Ask your question, and until they respond to that question, you don't deviate. So the last interview I had with him was 20 minutes long. I had 4 questions to ask him, and I just kept repeating the same question until he answered it. And he was screaming at me, I'm a journalist, you're not allowing me my free speech, DC Percival. And I just kept saying, did you blah, 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 blah. He'd say something, did you blah, 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 blah. And then he'd go, no, brilliant, thank you. Did you blah, 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 blah. Then he'd start off again. And until he answered me, I did move on to my next question. So 20 minutes, that last question, that last interview lasted with him. So no, he certainly didn't. He didn't interview me. I don't like to big myself up. I never had throughout my career. But what I was good at was interviewing people. Absolutely interviewing, watching their body language, seeing how they work. But after I knew what I was dealing with from that very first interview. I'm not a trained psychologist, but you know, after you've interviewed so many people over a career, you get to see traits in people. And so when it was confirmed to me by the forensic psychologist what I was dealing with, I knew I had to go into that last interview, not give him any grace, and just, you're going to ask these questions, and that's it. And I did, like I said, 20 minutes. I wish I started that off on my first one, because we were in there for 4 hours. You know, the solicitor actually said to me, I've been in murder interviews that aren't that long. And I said, I know. But sometimes when you go in to interview any suspect, not just him, you want them to speak, because you're sitting there with what you know. You haven't disclosed that to your solicitor, because you don't have to. And then you're waiting for them to wrap themselves up. And he did that. He wrapped him up. He wrapped him up so much that he gave me checkable stuff that I could go and check and confirm was false. Like, he told me that he'd complained like hundreds of times to the police he used to call us Nottingham Police. It was Nottinghamshire Police, not Nottingham Police. And I said, well, how many officers come to you? Oh, hundreds. I go and check. And yeah, complaints had been made, but it wasn't in the hundreds. So when you give an officer checkable material, I'm going to check it. And I did. So yeah, very interesting interviews. But I should have been more prepared for my first one, if that makes sense, because of what he was doing to the victim still. And I was aware of that. I couldn't let him continue doing that. I had to get him in. I said to my sergeant, I wanted a bit more time to get the stuff and then get him in. But I needed to get him in, get those bail conditions on him, to stop him causing any more alarm and distress to these people. These people that, you know, were clearly victims of this man, didn't know what to do with it. You know, tried blocking it, tried doing this, but he'd find them. It was the lengths that man went to have astounded me, to be fair. I mean, we went to the stalking clinic. So within the police, they have a stalking clinic where you've got psychiatrists there, you've got people from the NHS, social workers, and police. They they categorised him as a resentful stalker. That's his title. He's a resentful stalker.
What does that
And that's
mean,
all on
Janet?
public record.
Sorry,
What
Janet.
does that mean? Well,
what does that mean?
so you're going to ask me now, and I can't remember all the names of. So there are different terminologies for people who stalk. Like you'll have your violent stalker, you'll have your one that's been buffed by somebody who doesn't love them anymore. That's called something else. And then I think there's 4 types. You put me on the spot now because I can't remember.
Oh, don't
Can't
worry.
remember. All I remember is he was named as a resentful stalker because of his behaviour and the fact that this all really started when his contract wasn't renewed by the BBC. One of the victims, she took his place at BBC Radio Leeds. She hadn't even really ever saw him, and I think it was it 7 years after he'd actually left the BBC, after he'd left Radio Leeds. This person, one of the victims, took his place, his spot. So that just shows he was resentful. And I will tell you, the worst thing he did about that person was refer to their previous name throughout my interview. It's just disrespectful, just disrespectful.
So when you started interviewing him, had he started his personal hate campaign towards you?
No, that came out in the March.
Okay.
That was in the March.
We'll talk about that later because I just want to concentrate, if you don't mind, on him in your interviews. What would be your unbiased take on his presentation to you, how he presented himself to you?
Very narcissistic. It's all me. All me. I put to him evidence in relation to, the baby scan. Yeah. I put evidence to him of that, and I recall his response was, "Well, he shouldn't have started on me, should he? I feel nothing for him." So that tells me that is. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not, but as I said, you can tell a narcissist a mile off. You can tell them a mile off, and a psychopath, because he is very good at speaking, and he's very charming, and that's all traits of a psychopath. He can draw people in. Didn't draw me in. That's one thing they didn't. Any suspect tried to befriend me. They all did, and it just didn't work. I had suspects telling me, "I'm innocent, Janet, aren't I? You know I am." I'm going, "Yeah, of course you are. Of course you are." But that was my impression. It was all me. All me. This was done to me. That was done to me. I have a right to do this. I have a right to do that. I can contact people when I want to. I can. And I just want to make the point that, yes, everybody has free speech. And this was not a case about free speech in any shape or form. I learned a lot in this case because I went to CPS and he said he's called somebody the C-bomb. He's told somebody to go forth and multiply. And they said to me, he can do that. But what you can't do is keep repeating those same words day in, day out to the same person, because then you are targeting them. Then you step into harassment. And then if you're starting to use other forms of media to monitor them, to get to them, that is then when it turns into stalking, cyber stalking. Okay. No new law was set up for this man. No new law. I've never heard so much LOB in all my life. This law came out in 2012. It's not used very often. It's not used that often, but when it is, it's used in the right. And I've gone off on a tangent. I did tell you, Adrian, I would do this.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. Keep going.
In interview, yes, it was all me. No empathy for the victims. Nothing. He believed because people use fake names, they're trolls. No, they're not. That's not what trolls. That's not. thinking about some of the stuff that came out in the interview is laughable. Is actually laughable. He offered no defence, because we have to. When somebody gives an alibi or somebody they need us to contact, we have to do that. He gave names of people I needed to contact, and I did. I did contact them, and they know who they are if they're watching. One told me that he wouldn't speak to me without a solicitor present. I mean, this is just bizarre. So I used to come off the phone and go, this is just bizarre. I'm going to somebody for an alibi evidence, and they want to speak to a solicitor before they speak to me. And I said, okay, fair on. Here's my contact number. Here's my number. Contact me when you're ready to speak to me, and I'll speak to you. Not got a problem. Not got a problem. One of his friends tried to set me up, One of his friends tried to set me up, said I'd lied in a witness statement. That's what he said. Yeah, lied in a witness statement. It all came out in court, Adrian. It all came out in court. And I worked out who this person was. But bizarrely, it's just mad. The email addresses were the same, but it wasn't him. It wasn't the convicted stalker. It was his friend. They'd swapped some initials around because I said I can't get a hold of this person. So they got in touch with me and they said, well, I know who they are. I will get in touch with them. It was the same person I was talking to, but they'd changed the email address so it looked like they were having a conversation with each other. It's just bizarre. It opened my eyes up to kind of the bizarre. That's all I can say. That's all I say. Sorry, I'm going off on one, but
it's all right, Janet. Just for clarity for everyone watching, the reason why we can do this live tonight is one, Janet is a former police detective. She's retired. She's no longer governed or ruled by certain rules whilst you're a police officer. And secondly, the process of law is completed. The man went to trial. He was tried, found guilty by a jury, and sentenced by a judge. So that's why we can talk about this, because it's Janet's lived experience. Another question, Janet. You said that you've worked with other stalkers. Do you think he will ever stop?
no, 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 I don't. In
Do
all honesty,
you?
because he's still doing it now, isn't he? He's still doing it now.
I won't ask you what his issues are, but were you able in your investigation to actually put a label on some things?
No, not officially. Not officially. The forensic psychologist who I spoke to was fully briefed on the case, and this was his take on this person. I'm not a doctor. I was a police officer. But all I would say from the people I've dealt with in the past, to me, he was narcissistic. Just when somebody's sitting there saying me, woe is me, they can't do this to me. They can't. I can say what I like. Well, no, you can't. You can't say what you like when you're harassing people. So he couldn't get it. He could not get it. So I think there's some kind of personality disorder there. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor.
And that was proven in the court, in the trial, as in he was found guilty. So even though obviously he was saying to you, you can't, they can't do this, they can't do this. Well, they can, and the process of law proved that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can you?
Absolutely.
Sorry, Janet. Can you share a specific story from interviewing the victims? I mean, Jeremy Vine, Bernie Keith, and others that highlighted the personal toll of Belfield's actions and shaped your determination in the case.
More Bernie, I think, and Liz Green. More them. I was shocked by Bernie's evidence in court. I'm not going to say that on here because I didn't know to the extent that he had got. That shocked me. But that man had it for a decade of abuse from him. I try to see. The thing is, I always said to people, don't look. then when he started to personally target me, I was looking. And I got a lot of empathy for the victims then, because I can understand why people go and look, because you want to see what he's going to say next. You want to see. Doesn't mean I'm frightened of him in any shape or form, because I'm not. But I just wanted to know what the next battle I had during the trial. Now he started again. I say just bring it on. I haven't got an issue. But the toll on the victims, it was hard, and especially when the verdict came in for the 4 ladies in the case. And I know why that was, but luckily Justice Sarney made the right decision when he tried him civilly and said, you are guilty. And the women were all brave to come forward to give their evidence, and they were. It's hard giving evidence to court. I've stood in the box before, and I had to describe the caution, not in this trial, but other trials, and my hands are shaking. And, I'm a witness, I'm a professional witness, but your hands are shaking. It's very nerve-wracking for anybody to go to court, but especially for somebody that's never been involved in the justice system before. It's hard. It's hard. And the defence have a job to do, but in this case, because he represented himself, it played out completely differently in the trial. But yeah, it had a toll on all of them in different ways, I think. In different ways. I know Mr. Vine, he had, his address put out there and stuff like that. How frightening is that? How frightening, whether you like the person or not. Have some humanity for somebody else. You're putting their address out online. We've seen what happens to people in public now, with people that take everything what somebody is saying online as gospel truth. So yeah, I felt a lot of empathy, because they didn't know what to do. They did not want to do what to do. A lot, and I will tell you this, Adrian, a lot said, we don't want him to go to prison. All we want to do is for him to stop harassing us. Just leave us alone. Leave us alone. Because I think some thought he wouldn't go to prison, if that makes sense. And that's not what they wanted for him. They didn't want that. All they wanted to do was live their life in peace without this person being there in the background. One of the victims described it brilliantly in court. She said, I moved jobs. I left that job. I went to another one, and there he was. There he was. He found my email address, and he was there. It was like having him following me from job to job to job to job. So they went through some pain. And these people that are saying hurty words, that is driving me absolutely crazy. Because it's not hurty words. Not if you are getting it 24/7 every single day. And not the truth either. The lies.
Let me ask you something that I want to get clear on. The convicted stalker, during the whole process, was making comedy out of having his back doors bashed in. So was his door actually bashed in at home?
Yes, but that was part of an investigation that wasn't to do with me. Nothing to do with me whatsoever, though I got the blame for it. The blame for it.
There is something in the background. There's something ongoing that I can't ask any further questions about that, because there is something in the background. And as I have repeatedly said on this channel, you can't interfere with the process of law. So we won't go there. But he maintained that the police had bashed his doors in, and that definitely happened. But
yeah, when somebody refuses to open the door. So under Section 17 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, if a police officer knows or believes there is a suspect in that address, they have a power of entry. They have a power of entry. So in that case, Section 17 of PACE was used. You want to talk about my power of entry, because I've seen online they didn't have warrants. Well, people are getting us confused with America. Now, in some cases, the police will need a warrant to enter an address. I used to be on a burglary team many, many years ago, and we used to go to the magistrates' court, have a warrant served out, because we knew there was stolen property within an address and we needed to gain access to that address. The very first time I met this individual, I knocked on his door, he let me in. As soon as I stepped foot in his property, I arrested him. Then, under Section 32 of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, we have a power to search that property. And we did. And in that case, we took his laptop and his phone, which, as far as I'm aware, are still in the property store at Mansfield Police Station, because the man refused to take it off of me in court. So I can tell you that if you want.
Yes, but tell me just give me the background, because I understood that he'd asked for it back. Mr. Justice Saney had said, well, you can have it back. So what happened?
So this was a Friday, okay, and he stood up in court and said to the judge, well, they've had my laptop and phone for 2.5 years, I'd like to have it back. And the Justice Saney looked at me, is that a problem, officer? I went, absolutely not, I'll have it here Monday. I contacted a colleague at Mansfield Police Station. I said, can you get this property out for me for Monday? I'll pick it up and I'll take it to court. Did that, jumped on the train from Mansfield, went to Nottingham. So we had a KC, he was a QC then, but he was a KC, and we had a barrister, we had a junior with him as well. And I said to the barrister, shall I give him this outside the court? He says, no, go into court and give it to him. So I had him in the police evidence bag, you know, the laptop and the phone. And I go up to him and I says, Mr. Belfield, I've got a form for you to sign. It was a C70, which is a property, you know, return receipt. Can you just sign here for your laptop and your phone? He went, no. I said, what do you mean no? He said, I don't want it. You've had it for 2 years. You could have put anything on it. I went, okay. I looked at our barrister and I said, is that being recorded? And the stalker said, do you want me to repeat it? I went, no. I just want to know, is that on court record? Is that reported? And he went, yes, it is. No problem. I'll take it up to the CPS room, because we had a secure locker room in there where we could put exhibits. I'll take it back to Mansfield Police Station so it can be put back into property. So with him still saying now that they've got my laptop, they've got my property, no. He tried to say in court that I'd stolen his property. He was knocked down by the judge so many times for that. We didn't steal his property. You know, we seized it under Section 32 of PACE. So yeah, I don't know the reasons why he wouldn't accept that laptop and phone back. The police are certainly not keeping it. He can have it. It's there. Not a problem. We extracted everything off of it that we needed. So everything was taken from it. He can have the physical thing back. So yeah, that just... I don't know. I don't know, Adrian. I just chuckle because I don't know who he thinks he really is. You know, he's not a master criminal.
As we get towards talking about the actual trial, how did you feel about each of the victims as they came, about talking to the victims as they came forward one by one?
I have no problem talking to victims, you know, at all. At all. We had to draw a line at some point. We had 10 people. More people were coming. And we had to kind of say, we need to draw a line. I know somebody from the soap world contacted the KC's chambers directly. That came down to me to speak to them. In the end, they chose not to come on board, which is quite within their rights to do so. But I've no problem speaking to victims. I've got no problem speaking to suspects. You know, no issue. But the police and the CPS have to say this is the benchmark. Any more, it's going to be a pile on, and he's probably not going to get any more time inside if you keep adding, and you overwhelm a jury, and that is not what we're there to do. Sorry, you might hear my neighbour shouting in Spanish from next door. So,
Were there times in the investigation, Janet, that actually impacted your personal life, perhaps due to the volume of abusive content you had to review or threats actually directed at you? How did you cope with all of that?
Yeah, when so in the March, he went public and named me, and I had threats. I had, you name it, I had it. I had him offering money for people to get information on me, get dirt on me, as he says. I had my full calls monitored at work. I had cards sent to me. Banners were put up around the police station, around the area, saying DC Percival is corrupt. Everybody's corrupt. So he called me corrupt. That's the worst. I mean, he defamed me in relation to my dyslexia. All of this. So all this was going on, and I have to be honest. At one point, I told them, "You can poke it up your posterior. I'm not going to take this any longer." But then when I'd come off the ceiling, this was the day he called me corrupt online. I came off the ceiling. The Federation came out to see me, and I said, "I've calmed down now. I'm not going anywhere. I am not going anywhere. I'm going to help these people. Justice needs to be done." Um, and I stuck with it. And you can call me all the names you want. To me, it's all very, very childish. The behaviour that comes, the name calling. I watched some of the comments on here before, and I'm thinking, are we dealing with grown-ups, or are we dealing with, not from your people? I want to say it wasn't comments from your audience. They will know who I'm talking about. Somebody popped their head in. And I'm thinking, this is a grown-up. We're not 12. We're not in the playground. And you're calling people names. It's time to grow up. It's time to grow up. And I am a battler. And yeah, I couldn't wait to get in court. Couldn't wait for my day in court. It was
I'm curious.
fantastic.
Sorry, Janet, looking back, I'm curious as to what the turning point was in the investigation that gave you the confidence with the case that you could succeed. And then how did that feel personally?
I always knew we were going to get charges. Okay, my very first meeting with the barrister and the CPS, we were going to get charges. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. It was just tightening the case up so much, because what they said was, what they said to us, I'm sorry, I'm reading your comments, I'm being distracted. That's something to do with dyslexia, getting distracted by something else. Thank you for all your nice comments anyway. What the barrister actually said to me, Janet, we need to make sure we've got everything, because what we don't want on day one of the trial was him to produce an email saying this, to knock everything out. So I always knew we were going to get charges. I could see it was harassment. I could see it was stalking. Experience showed me it was that. But the CPS are a hard act to actually get through. We actually had a little bit of a joke about it, because he claims I just had a little thin file, went to CPS and got charges. I said to the reviewing lawyer, I said, what I did was I knocked on your door and says, I really don't like this man. Do you think you could give him a few charges? And she said to me, yeah, Janet, just leave that little bit with me, and I'll agree with you. Trust me, I went head to head with that woman, head to head with her. I was swearing at my desk. I was saying, oh my God, what more do they need? Do they want blood off of me? But no, nothing was going to stop me. There was no turning point in the case, but it was just waiting for them to charge. And that's what kept us down a little bit, because we're going, right, we've submitted the file again. We've done everything you wanted. Then she'd come back and go, no, not quite. Can you just do this little bit? And I was on rest days when the charges came through. And I'd taken my laptop home, I'd taken my phone home, and I was, because people were still contacting me on my rest days. So I had people from the broadcasting service contacting me, victims of contact. I didn't have a problem. I said, contact me. I hadn't got a problem. And I saw this email come through and I thought, fantastic. I was on rest days. I rang my DCI up. I says, can I come in tomorrow? Can I cancel my rest day? Come in tomorrow so we can get these on the summons for him. She said, absolutely, Janet. Absolutely. So I did. I went in, got the summons prepared for him, and then you have to wait a little bit. So the fire prep unit have to get a court date and stuff like that. We were serving it in person. So it was my colleague, my sergeant, and my other colleague that went to his address and served him with the summons. But he recorded it and then cut out bits. You know, he only does bits for his narrative that fuels that. So no, I had no doubt we were going to get charges. It was just when. It was just when we were going to get these charges. And I had other jobs as well at this time. You've got to bear in mind, I was dealing with other cases. So they did take a lot of work off me. You know, some of my smaller cases that I hadn't really started to investigate, they went out to other people. But I had two don't know if I should say this, but serious sexual offence cases running at the same time. So I was doing that as well as dealing with this, and we worked on a live department. So you had prisoners coming in as well. So you had daily business as well as all this. So it did pay. Now I never let my work go home with me. I used to use the gates of the police station as my cut off, drive through them, going home, jobs cut off, come back into the police station, gates open, back into work mode. But he did bring it home to me because it was public. It was public. But I only that one time when he first put the thing up about me being corrupt, did I say, you know, poke it up your posterior, basically, I've had enough. When I was not so angry, I came down to earth and started going nowhere. You know, I've had suspects in the past, you know, try to complain about me. Let me tell you this: there was nearly 400 complaints into PSD when he did that broadcast in the March about me. That I had the detective sergeant from PSD Professional Standards ring me up and ask me if I was all right. Asked me if I was all right. So yeah, it that took a toll. I have to be honest, it did take a toll, because when you're getting that much abuse, but all in the back of my mind was, we have got a case. It's a very, very strong case. You know, very, very strong, and we'll just see how this pans out. That's it. That's all I did. I wasn't going to let him win. He was never going to beat me down, so I disappeared, because you know what the video would have been. She's gone, hasn't she, now? They put somebody else on there because she's corrupt, because she's thick, because she's this, because she's that. Well, I'm none of that. I'm none of that. Yeah, sorry. Went off again.
Let's get into the trial.
Yeah.
So the convicted stalker represented himself,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a little confused because he had representation in the court. So how did he go from representing himself to having representation within the court?
Okay. I can tell you, we all sat down together, knew he would represent himself. We knew it. We knew that he would. So this, where he's saying he had a KC, technically, yes, but not in the way he's describing it. I went to every single hearing up to that trial, and I'm digressing, just going back a little bit, because what I want to say is, I used to be either in the courtroom or by video link, because it was during COVID, a lot of the hearings, and I would then see a video at night where he's saying the judge is on my side, and I used to sit there thinking, were we in the same courtroom? No, we weren't. So there were two hearings in particular that I thought was brilliant. One was, he wanted all the body worn footage. We had it all on a disc ready to give to him. So we went in for a hearing. He said his part to Justice Sarni. Our side said ours. And we said, yeah, we've got it here ready to give to him. Not got an issue. Justice Sarni said, no. What relevance has that got to your trial, Mr. Blah, 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 blah. Anyway. So then when he announced that he was representing himself, I think the law changed some time ago to prevent defendants cross-examining their victims. It came out during domestic violence cases and sexual offences cases to prevent that. So we put in a request for special measures for somebody to represent, or not represent him, ask the questions he wants asking of the victims and the witnesses. So I was sat behind him at this hearing, and he stood up and said, I don't want it. I don't want anybody questioning the victims and witnesses. I want to do it because I know the truth. But Justice Arnie went away, had a little think, came back and said, no, I'm allowing the prosecution to have special measures put in place. So the CPS did a little bit of a boo-boo. They said that I was getting special measures as well. Excuse me. And he made a video about that, saying I was scared to be cross-examined about me. And I hit the roof with the barrister. Hit the roof with them. I said, I never asked for that. I'm not frightened to face him in court. So, and they apologised. They apologised to me. So, sorry, that's not my dogs. That'll be neighbours' dogs. So I was cross-examined by him. So were one of the victims, one of the witnesses waived their rights to have the KC do it, and they were questioned by him. So he actually sat in the court where the prosecution would normally sit, so that he couldn't see the witnesses and victims behind the screen. So he sat in a different place. So no, he didn't have a KC representing him at all. The KC was there to put his questions to the witnesses and the victims in the case. That was it. It wasn't he's harping on because I couldn't afford one and the judge gave me one. No, he didn't.
So from your seat in the court, what was the most challenging or unexpected moment of the trial, in your view?
Oh, when the judge allowed him. Yeah, no, not his test. He didn't testify, so he refused to take the box. It was that the judge allowed him to do what he did, with saying he could report on his trial. And that's never happened, but I know why he did it, and I understand why he did it. And the Justice Arnie was very, very clever. That's all I will say. But can I tell you something that really funny happened on day one? Okay, I was stood about 4 people behind him, and I'm sort of hiding behind the colleague so he couldn't see me. And there was a man stood behind us, and he goes, this is day one. This is Monday. Nobody understands about a Monday start of the court. You've got loads of people there. You've got loads of trials starting. You've got members of the jury out there, loads of people. This man behind us said, do you know what they're all here for? And we went, no, what is it? Well, they're all here for him. And what do you mean? Who is he? You don't know who he is? And we went, no. We ain't got a clue. Who is he? Well, he's suing the BBC and Nottingham Police. Is he? Never knew that. Is that what you're here for? He went, yeah. They knocked his door down and stuck a thumb up his bum. And my colleague went, did they? Why on earth would the police do that to him? And this bloke goes, I've no idea. And then this bloke walked off. And a woman behind him said, they're not all here for him. And we went, we know. And then I watched him walk past this crowd of people, waving at them, doing the royal wave, up the court steps. And me and my colleagues stood there going, what's he doing? He walked straight in past all these people. 2 seconds later, he's turned round and he's walking out again because he thought he could go past everybody in security. I just thought that was funny. But nothing really shocked me in the trial at all. It went smoothly. The only way things happened differently was because the KC for special measures got COVID, so we had to run the trial a bit differently. I was asked to come halfway through in to read out the interviews. There was hours of them because he didn't want anything redacted. So everything he said in the interview was played out to the jury, which was fantastic. He delayed the jury when he didn't come back for their, when they came back. I think he was in Greg's, that's what I've heard, I don't know. We were all sitting there waiting, kept the judge waiting, kept everybody waiting, then came in. Shorts and shirts most days. No respect for the court whatsoever. None. Just thought it was a game. This is serious. This is, this is Crown Court. This is not telly. This is Crown Court. And I think the judge allowed him to do what he did because that placed the jury. The jury, if you watch other documentaries about cases, I think there was one about the lad that got killed by a gang, and the defendants were all laughing and joking in the witness box. Well, the judges will allow that because it shows the jury. So when he's appearing in shorts and shirts, it's showing so much contempt for the court that the jury will see that. So he stared at me a couple of times. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't allowed in to begin with until I gave my evidence. They didn't allow me in for this one. And I sat there and he was staring at me like we was in a playground and going, oh, and I'm going, what are you doing? Like trying to stare me out. And I'm thinking, look, once again, are we back in the playground where you're trying to be a little bully? But no, my cross-examination was brilliant. I've never been cross-examined like that in my life. But no, Adrian, nothing stood out in that case apart from the stupidity of his behaviour. He wasn't taking it seriously. He didn't think he'd be convicted. He was that sure of himself. He tried to get it struck out at one point as well. At the end of the prosecution evidence, the defence can put in a request to strike out a case if the prosecution hasn't proved their evidence. And the judge said, no, we're carrying on. And then he refused to get in the box, saying that his police interviews were his evidence. It's not.
Was it confirmed at trial that the convicted stalker was and is an investigative journalist?
No. He asked me that question. He asked me, do you know who I am? I went, no. Oh, did you know who I was when the investigation started? I went, no, not at all. Do you not know I'm a journalist? I went, no. The judge never confirmed he was a journalist. He said he was a social commentator. I think, is it in his summing up? I think he says you're not a journalist. You are a social commentator. He's not a journalist. He actually hates journalists. He tells them, I can't stand them. So why are you then calling yourself a journalist when you're calling every other journalist in the world, So no, the judge never confirmed at any point that he was a journalist.
So how did the convicted stalker's decision to represent himself and then report on the trial via YouTube affect the proceedings from your viewpoint as the lead officer?
Trying to keep everybody on board, really, because he was breaching court bail conditions by calling their names and stuff like that. I know why Justice Sarni did it, and it was the correct decision to do. But that was the only thing, just making sure everybody was all right about what was happening, because it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair because he wasn't recalled. He claims that he was telling everybody this is exactly what was said in court. It wasn't. I watched him scribbling notes. He later turned it into a laptop and was typing. So it wasn't fully what a court transcript was. And he was trying to claim that they were court transcripts. They're not. Anybody can apply for the court transcripts. I think you have to pay for them. And you can see exactly what was said. But it was just making sure the victims and the witnesses were all right about it, because I knew why the judge was doing it. But you can understand how they felt when he was actually breaching court bail conditions on a daily basis by discussing them and talking about them. But in the end, I think it just made him look more foolish. And the judge was seeing that as well. The judge was seeing all of that. Because I'd go in the next day. Sorry,
Janet, go on.
No, I said I'd go in the next day and I said, look, I've had this message. And the barrister would say, don't worry, we're passing it all on to Justice Sarni. He is aware.
Any surprises during the trial?
No, only that he wouldn't get in the box. That really did surprise me
Because a lot
because
of
he
people
was
don't
all
know.
about. Yeah, yeah. So he claimed that his interview was his evidence and it hasn't changed. Well, that's not evidence in a court. Okay, evidence is what can be tested in that box. So it's tested by the defence and it's tested by the prosecution. So what you say in that box, whether it's your police statement or it's your police interview, it has to be tested by both sides. Then it becomes evidence. And he knew full well that our KC would have just quashed him, you know. So the judge, Justice Sarni, told the jury to draw an inference on his silence, on his refusal. Because what happened was our KC said, we wanted to ask him these questions. These set of questions, we wanted to ask him these when he was in the box. And the Justice Sarni said to the jury, because the prosecution cannot ask him those questions, you could now draw an inference on his silence, on his refusal to get in the witness box. Because he was, he was saying it was all lies. It was all a witch hunt. There's no witch hunt. He's not special. He's no special than, the person that I got the first stalking protection order for, in the country. He's not. So one of my old colleagues has just asked a question. I've got to give him a shout out. He's one of your followers and
Oh,
has
brilliant.
been asked me to give him a shout out. Hello, Andy. So yeah, that was the only thing that really surprised me because he was all mouth. The truth was going to come out in court. He was going to have his day. Then when he had the opportunity, he didn't get in the witness box. I got in the witness box. All the victims got in the witness box. The witnesses got in the witness box, but he didn't. So that should tell everybody something, really.
I think the narrative has been, oh, it's just hurty words. But if you take, for example, and there were 8 victims at the court, presenter Jeremy Vine, the court heard that the convicted stalker had waged a 4-year campaign against Jeremy, sending over 1,000 emails and messages. So, in your view, was this not online criticism? Was it more criminal harassment?
Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, everybody is allowed freedom of speech. So I could call you a name, Adrian, not a nice name, but I could do it today online. And as long as I didn't do it again tomorrow and the day after and the day after that and the day after that, that's fine. But what this man was doing, he was doing it every single day. And more times, more times. Now, one of the poor victims, his parents were contacted, for God's sake. And I listened to that recording. It's horrendous to send to, and I hope you don't mind me calling his mum elderly, but who wants their elderly mother to hear some person saying he's got beef with them, and get your son to do something? Do you think this is disgusting, what he's doing to me? So hurty words does not exist. I hate that word. I hate that word. Absolutely do hate it. And it's ridiculous. No, this is not a case about hurty words. This is a case about stalking and harassment on a big scale. Trust me.
So, it was a 5-week trial. What was your
Mhm.
immediate reaction when the guilty verdicts came in on the 4 stalking charges?
Yeah.
And how did it feel
Brilliant.
after such a
Brilliant.
prolonged investigation and trial?
Brilliant. Well, it should have been 6-week trial. It should have been 6 week. But because he refused to take the box, it dropped down to 5 weeks. Okay. So the defence didn't put their side across at all. Fantastic. I was upset about the first 4. And I sat there thinking, oh my days, because they came in first, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. And if it had been all not guilty, we knew there was going to be hell to pay, But you can never second guess a jury. You can't second guess what a jury is going to do. They listen to what evidence is put before them in that courtroom. But when the others came in, it was like fantastic. It was, sorry, I've got a stingless bee flying around me now. Yeah, they have stingless bees here. That's another story. So when the 4 guilty came in, it was fantastic. The courtroom was packed, and you heard them all. You know, they were going, yeah, 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 and then they went, oh, oh, oh. So no, it was fantastic. But we knew he would be found guilty. We didn't know how many of them, if that makes sense. Could have been 1, could have been 2. We I was shocked that the 4 ladies didn't get their guilty, but as I say, Justice Sani did his bit and found them guilty on a balance of probabilities, because that is what a civil court case is. It's a balance of probabilities, whereas criminal is beyond reasonable doubt. So if you've got doubt in your mind, the judge always tells the jury you cannot convict. He said any doubt in your mind whatsoever, you cannot convict. I don't know if it had been a different story, if we'd had everything that was, went from the BBC. I don't know. I can't. As I said, I've sat in when people have been found not guilty and thought, oh my days, And I tell everybody this. I told every single victim that I've dealt with and the people involved in this case, if he is found not guilty, it is not anything that you've done wrong. Okay? They will believe you, but because the threshold is so high, beyond reasonable doubt, it's very, very difficult threshold to get over. And he's harping on that he was not convicted of anything violence. 2 of them were 4A stalking, causing serious alarm and distress. That carries 10 years inside. And the justice had something wrong, for one of them. And he sentenced him for Bernie Keith on the old act, which only gave 5 years. So should you've got more? Probably, because
Sorry, John. A couple of more questions, and then we'll go to. We'll give everyone in the chat an opportunity to ask some questions, and I will decide which questions. But we'll get to your civil case against the convicted stalker. I would like to talk about that momentarily. But during the sentencing hearing, when the judge described Belfield as weaponizing the internet, did that resonate with your own experience? And can you share why or why not?
Absolutely. He was telling people to get information on me. Now, let me tell you what happened, because I read the comments. I did. I was told not to, but I'm a bit stubborn like that. I did. One had said, we have found her on a corrupt police website. We know what her car is and we know where her house is. Now, I know it's a load of rubbish because I never changed my name to my married name. So my house was in my married name and my car was in my married name. So it wasn't Percival. So he was actively looking for dirt about me. Now, I want to get this in as well, and I'd forgot. Sorry, Adrian.
Sorry.
He put a picture up of one of my past convictions. Okay, this man was put away for 19 years for a gunpoint rape. This man was, okay. He didn't look best in his police picture. The convicted stalker put a picture up going, look at this poor sod. His case definitely needs reopening. He didn't stand a chance against the corrupt DC Percival, did he? Now, that man was a violent man who raped a lady by gunpoint. Now, I wasn't shocked for me. I was shocked for that victim, because if that victim had seen that, how would that have made her feel? Now, that's weaponizing the internet. That is getting false information out there about people. And why are people believing him? Can anybody explain that to me? Why are people believing him? Why are people believing him to go and find information about me, to put up banners about me, to put up pictures about previous defendants and say he looks like a poor sod? He was a very, very dangerous man who's where he should be now, you know. So yeah, I totally agree with Justice Sarni. He weaponized the internet, thinking that he was above the law and that he could do this to people. Well, you can't, and it's not hurty words. We're living in a different world now where social media is prime. And what I've been making some videos, and what I've been saying to people is, do not be frightened of these people. You would not allow somebody to come into your front room and start verbally abusing you. So why do you allow them to do it online? Do not show any fear to them. Just block and report. Block and report if they continue. So yeah, I totally and utterly will say he did weaponize the internet for some people that absolutely, totally believed him. And it was like a cult. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like a cult, that you believe the leader of the cult. Their word is gospel, without actually checking checkable facts. You know, as I said, that man believed on day one of the trial that he was there to see the convicted stalker sue the BBC and Nottinghamshire Police. Yeah.
Well,
So yeah.
talking about his defence in court, the convicted stalker said that his actions were a form of investigative journalism, which I've already asked you the question. But Mr. Justice
No.
Saney, the judge, rejected this outright, stating it was, and I quote, not journalism, and I further quote, a vendetta pursued by a deeply obsessive man. This brings
Yeah.
me round to talk about your civil case that you brought against the convicted
Mm-hmm.
stalker. Can you give me an insight on the personal attacks and how they affected you and, more importantly, your family?
Well, my husband, I had to restrain my husband because he was so angry by what he was seeing. And I kind of laughed it off, because at one point I was told by the CPS, you know, this is criminal, what he's doing against you. You can pursue a criminal case. But if that had happened, I'd have had to come off the investigation. And if I'm honest, I don't think anybody else wanted it. Because afterwards I had so many cops coming up to me saying, we couldn't have done what you did, Janet. We couldn't have taken the crap you took from him. Because I had to keep my mouth shut. I couldn't say anything. So I had the help of the Federation to begin with. And it's the first case. It's the first sort of case. I mean, he's the first man in the UK to be found guilty of 4 individual stalking cases. At that point, he was the first man. So that made history. Mentally told, yeah, I'm human. I'm human. You know, I'm not a robot. I did take some of the digs that he took personally, but then once I spoke to the solicitors, they said, and everybody else I spoke to, they go, we know you, Janet, we know you. He called me corrupt. Now, I was vetted to management level vetting. You know, that's higher than CID, Criminal Investigations Department. That's higher than your bobbies in uniform. And luckily, what played into my court when we were taking him to civil court, I'd just been vetted again. You know, corrupt. He called me corrupt. I mean, but I knew I wasn't corrupt. Everybody I worked with knew I wasn't corrupt. And would I have still been in the job if I was corrupt? No. So it was words, Adrian, just to get rid of me. He was trying to get rid of me because I'd got him backed into the corner, and he knew what was happening. He just did it like every other suspect that I've dealt with. You know, I've been called a little dirty rat as I put somebody in a cell. Do you know what I mean? And shut the door on them, you dirty little rat. And I said, thanks for that. That's what you called the victim. And you've just got no comment in my interview, haven't you? Brilliant. So he just did it in a more personal way. So at home, yeah, I was a bit snappy, I must admit. I was a bit like that. My husband had to take the brunt of it. Me having to calm him down. Do not say anything. Don't. You know, and lots of people coming up to me going, you know, are you all right, Janet? I'm absolutely fine, because we're going to see him in court. We're going to see him in court. He can't intimidate me, and he couldn't intimidate me then, and he won't intimidate me now, because he tried to do that to get rid of me, Adrian. You know, that's all he wanted to do, is get rid of me, and I was going nowhere, absolutely nowhere. And I've never backed down from any of my cases.
So one more question from me, Janet, and then I'm going to open it up
Yes.
to the chat for a few minutes or so. So if anybody's got any questions, hang fire for 60 seconds, and then you can start asking them. Janet, has this case shaped the way police approach stalking and harassment, importantly, in the digital age?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't answer that one. I don't
Okay.
know. I just don't know. I know we went on to create a spreadsheet which is now being used in other cases where there's so much material. And this spreadsheet was absolutely inevitable to us, because I was asked a question to get everything on Outwits, the case he wanted it in the court. I contacted my colleague, and within 10 minutes he'd put it in the spreadsheet. He brought up all the documents with Outwits on, got it back to me within 10 minutes, and I got all those documents, the KC in the court. But has it? I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay. I don't have any more questions for you, Janet. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour to be able to
Thank you.
talk to you like this. Anybody got any questions? Alan's saying this case would have done my head in. Well done, Janet.
Thank you.
Sam says, bizarre question, but did he have a romantic relationship with any of his victims?
No, not as far as I know.
BSD Junkie says, no question. I just want to extend my warmest thanks to Janet for her diligent hard work and skill whilst being abused by this abhorrent criminal.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
I'm not sure whether you would have any knowledge of this, but Paulie Gallieri is asking where the money he took from fans to sue the BBC went. Do you have any knowledge of that?
I can't really discuss that
Okay.
online.
Okay. And I will say that because there are still things going on in the background, and it may prejudice the outcome of what is going on in the background. That's why we've avoided certain subjects this evening, because genuinely, for legal reasons, we can't talk about it. What was Janet's first reaction when the case file was given to her? That's from Rich.
I thought, yes, this is something I can get my teeth into. Do you know what I mean? I thought this is going to be big, because, as I said, 2 days after reading what I had, I said to my sergeant, he's going to come for us. He'll come for us big time, and he did. So no, I loved it. Thank you, Andy.
Don Wigley asks, do you think he enjoyed it? The trial?
No,
No.
not at all.
Stuart says, how many times was this house raided?
For me, I'm not talking about any other case because I wasn't involved in that. Twice, and it's not a raid. It's not raid. Can we get away from saying it was raided? It was a lawful search of his property after he'd been arrested.
Alan Little says he's lucky all the victims went to the authorities. If he went after the wrong person, he may have received some different justice. Oh, yes, Neil says, and I forgot to ask, apologies, Janet, about your civil case, because you took him to the High Court,
Yeah,
and won.
yeah. He still owes me. Well, that's all I will say. There's things happening. Obviously, I can't talk about what's happening.
Okay.
But he owes me. That's all I'll say.
Okay, we won't go any further out of respect for yourself, Janet. Quite a few people
Thank you.
tonight are saying, do you think he's going to go back inside?
I don't know. I'm not a police officer anymore. I don't know. I've no idea. I want to try and implement different things on prison license and things. That's my aim now. to prevent people who have been convicted of a cyber offence being allowed on social media whilst on licence. But I don't know if he'll go back.
Okay.
No, I
Well,
don't know.
Janet, thank you for giving us your time, your expertise and wisdom. First time anywhere that you've been able to speak your truth. And as I said at the very beginning of this tonight, it was all about you talking about your lived experience. You just happen to have been the lead officer on a particular case. So I
Yeah,
just want to say
exactly.
thank you on behalf of everybody in the chat and everybody that's been watching this evening. And it's been very, very enlightening and interesting. Thank you, Janet.
No, thank you, and thank you for letting me speak. I needed to speak.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you. Bye from Costa Rica.
I hope the sun still shines. Thank you very much, Janet. Thank you for being part of
Bye.
the
Bye,
live.
bye,
Thank
bye.
you. Thank you. So there you have from the lead officer in the case, the truth. And there is nothing more than we can do other than tell truths. For other people, whatever they say, if it contradicts what Janice just told you, it's lies. Lies. And the person that we're talking about is a convict, a convicted stalker, and a self-admitted liar twice in the High Court. So it's not a good look. But to everyone who has donated and supported the channel this evening, thank you very much. I hope Janet's stories and truth was both illuminating and entertaining for you. So now you're getting truths from the person who was the lead officer in both the case and the trial. My name's Adrian Allen. This was the Theatre of the Mind. It was a live number 232. We have another live tomorrow night, Monday night at 7:30. Thank you to everyone that was part of it, watching, commenting, talking and chatting amongst yourselves. I really appreciate it. If you can smash the likes, because we've got nearly 1,200 people watching, if you can smash the likes, please, before we conclude this particular live, I would very much appreciate it if you could, because it helps the algorithm and the channel. So my name's Adrian Allen. Thank you for your likes, your subscriptions, but most of all, your indulgence. Thank you to Janet Percival, former Detective Constable with Nottinghamshire Police, who was the star of the show this evening. We'll be back Monday, 7:30. Whatever you do, wherever you go, if you're not aware of the Battenberg story, join us on another live and we will regale you with that. But whatever you do, take a bit of emergency Battenberg with you. And this is not a show. This is a mission. It's a mission to tell the truth. See you Monday, 7:30. Thank you for tonight. Really appreciate it.